Hello everybody, this is Dawson again with Chicken Bros, and I'm going to give you all the updates on this RM80 that I've done so far. So, yeah, I've replaced the things and done the things that definitely have needed to been done. I put on a new sprocket. You can see right there, it's got nice new teeth on it. It's good. I put on a new chain, and I retightened the chain. I rebuilt the rear brake. So basically, I just took off the banjo bolt right here, brought the rear brake over into my shop, and cleaned out everything. I took it all the way apart, cleaned it all up, got any sand out of there, put it back together, and yeah, then I did like a reverse brake bleed through all the brakes, and then I bled them out the normal way. Did a full brake fluid change on the system, also cleaned out my reservoir and all the lines. My brakes are phenomenal now. I also swapped out the brake pads. As you can see right in there, they are in much better shape than they were before. So yeah, also I added this exhaust guard right here, because you don't want to get any huge dents in your expansion chamber. Otherwise, you've got a good guarantee you're going to lose a little bit of power. Probably one of the next things I'm going to do is I'm going to put flush out my radiator. I might rebuild the water pump. I think I'm just going to flush out the radiator. I did a gear oil change. I also washed the whole bike. I just gave the whole bike a wash. I've ridden it since, but it made everything look a lot nicer. Yeah, you just watch this and go watch the other video, and you'll see the big difference on how everything looks compared to what it did before. And that new side plastic right there is actually homemade. I just put that on there. It helps protect your suspension a little bit better, and it just looks a little bit weird if you're missing plastic on your bike. Yeah, the carburetor, oh, you can actually see what it is now because, you know, it's not covered in grease and grime anymore. I also retightened up everything, tightened up all the boots on the carburetor. I adjusted my clutch. I also re-greased my levers. And my clutch before had way too much play in it. You know, before it would go up and down about a half mile. Right there, that's about how much play you want. If you get much more than that, it just makes it kind of hard to grab it. I made this new kind of number plate deal for it. And, you know, it doesn't look as good as the last one, but it does help keep dirt and dust off the forks. So it'll help your fork seals last longer. And the old number plate, I gave that to my brother for his bike, because his bike didn't even have a number plate. Oh, I also put on the front brake caliper, bled those brakes. It works pretty good. It works, you know, just as good as the rear, if not better. Yeah, there's not much to these brakes. That one, the reason that it had to be replaced is because the dude that had it before, he got bashed by a big rock, destroyed that front brake. So I just had to buy a new one. It was $35. I also added a new engine. I put a new engine sprocket. See, if you follow the chain, you'll see the engine sprocket eventually. And when I bought the bike, I tightened up all the bolts. You check everything. Whenever you buy a new bike, and even just once every 2 weeks, check all your bolts, make sure they're all tight and everything. And before you ride, just quick look over the bike. Spend a minute checking everything, so then you don't ride with a horrible problem. Yeah. I cleaned out the gas tank. I saw a little bit of grime towards the bottom, just a very small amount, so I just flushed it out with a little bit of gas. That helped a little bit with better flow into the petcock. And when I washed it, I also washed out the radiator and everything. I cleaned out the shroud and all that to help it all be good. I also took off all the hose clamps on the radiator hose, and I pulled off the hose, cleaned up under there, cleaned out the inside of the hose, then stuck it back on so it'd have a better seal and more cold air could get to the engine, because it just seemed like it wasn't. I went on like a 2-hour ride and it was just getting a little bit hot towards the end. After I did that, on more of my rides, it cooled it down a little bit better. I also added a tachometer. You can see that wire right there. It just goes up to the tachometer. Since I put it on, I have put 15 hours on this in the past 2.5 weeks. Yeah, the plastics look much nicer after washing it. It's got some new stickers on there. They weren't very good stickers, which I was expecting that. They were like $4 for 100 of them. A lot of them stayed on good. Some of them didn't stay on so good on the gas tank. Like when I filled it up with gas, if you spill any gas, it kind of screws them up. I added this toolkit right here, and this is very helpful. I haven't had to use it yet, but it's got a crescent wrench, and that'll pretty much fit any bolt. It's got a screwdriver with a couple screw heads, and a small Allen wrench thing with all the sizes too. I took apart the silencer and cleaned that all the way out. That helped get up a bunch of grime and grease. I also took off the power valve cover and cleaned that out. That helped. I can't really tell difference in power, but I did clean off some carbon buildup. I took off the exhaust, and I cleaned out the exhaust ports and the intake. No, not to the intake port, just the exhaust port. And I could tell a small difference. And I think that's probably worth it, because you only have to take off one bolt and then use some pliers to get off your spring, clean out your ports. I also, checked up on the reeds, make sure my reeds looked alright. They looked fine. Yeah, the whole bike is awesome now. Just like my grandpa said, you spend $100 in parts, spend a little time on it, you'll have a damn nice bike. I only bought it for $100. It's awesome. How you can only spend that much in parts, and it's like I got a brand new bike now. And it looks good. A quick pressure wash with that pressure washer we got. It's awesome. I sharpened up my foot pegs too. There's only so far I could sharpen them. I'll probably just get some new foot pegs, because I like to stand up. I like to, have my feet planted on there. Yeah, it always feels nicer to do that. Oh, I keep forgetting all the things I've done to this bike. I rebuilt the front forks. I guess you don't really need to say front forks, because you only have one set of forks on a bike. And that was just from riding over to this spot. Just from our back patio over here to here. I got about that much play out of it. There's not really any major bumps on the lawn. When I go on a long desert ride, the zip tie will be pushed, probably about to there. So I'm still not quite using all the travel, which I'm not really all that concerned. A lot more people, rather than just me, ride this. So I'm just going to leave the bike like that. It rides nice. The suspension's very nice. Especially the rear shock. Since it's got such a long rear shock, you can run it relatively soft. And I've never bottomed it out. I can't bottom it out. We put like 2 people on here and we jumped and it didn't bottom out. So that was pretty impressive. Again, I forgot what else I've done. I put on a new rear tire. I went and bought this at our local Let's Ride over on the way to Hayburn. And this was $25 for this tire. And it was brand new. And it was a brand new takeoff. So somebody bought the bike. They didn't want the tire that was on it. So they took off the tire. And then they sold it to me for a quarter. An actual quarter of what this tire cost. This is a $100 tire that I got for $25. Yeah. I also added the safety wire to the bolts right there. They both didn't have it. So I just used some old electric fence wire, put it through there. That's crucial for safety, because if that tries to go loose, your bolt comes out, you're dead. That's not good at all if that were to happen. Yeah, you could die from that, because having your whole wheel come off and losing it, it'd be very unlikely that would happen, but if it did happen, that'd be terrible. And in the least, you get your wheel off camber, damage something. Alright, enough of that. Get back to what else I've done. I added these spoke covers. And I also greased all the bolts and everything. Put some grease right there, so then as the chain goes through it, it's like an automatic greaser, greases up the chain. I cleaned off the rotors really well. That was last week. And I cleaned up the rims when I changed the tire, I cleaned up the rims really well. They did not have too much rust in there. Nothing was scarred up or anything. It was all in pretty good shape. I really think those spoke covers that I put on add a nice look to the bike. And my skid plate, I added a DIY skid plate. You can see right there, we've got that metal one right there, and then this plastic one right here. It's important to use a plastic one. You can use metal if you want, especially if it's this flexible tin, which I think I might switch this out to metal, this piece of tin. You do have to be careful though if you use too rigid of metal on something like a KTM, it can kind of tie up your frame in knots. But with the Suzuki or Honda, for how rigid their frames are, it's not really going to make a difference. You see right here, I did use a Sharpie to kind of fill in a little bit of where it had faded, and that made it look a lot nicer. On the other side, you couldn't see it at all, so I just had to re-dry on there. I readjusted my forks how I want them to, and these are nice. I love modern stuff. You know, you just have that screw, you unscrew it, or screw it back in. But yeah, that is my 1994 Suzuki RM80. I really like this bike a lot. Oh, again, I forgot about another thing. I've done a lot of work to this. I put in a new, I swapped out some of the jets in the carburetor. That took me about 10 minutes to take off the boot, slide it over, and put that in there. Yeah, it's impressive all the things I've got done in just a couple weeks, and it's even more impressive how much that improved everything on the bike, the feel. So that is the Suzuki. That's an update on everything. Just watched it today, all the things I've done to it. I'm loving this bike. Subscribe.